So in 81, our team finished second at PSACs, second at regionals. Why do you think at nationals everything fell together?
Well, I don't know exactly why it happened, but I tell you that that when we ran into the regional meet, which was on the same course as the national meet, that was 6 miles. We came back 2 days later and ran 5 miles in Van Cortlandt Park and won the second of the IC4A championships that we won. And I'll never forget that. If you've ever ran at Van Cortlandt Park, if you had the opportunity to run at Van Cortlandt Park, there's a stretch, you go the starting line and you go out and you run through the hills, and then you come out of the hills and you come right down the finish line and you make that loop back out again. So you can see them coming out and you see them for a long distance. We had gotten brand new shirts right before the regional meet. They didn't even have time to put anything on them. They were just plain yellow shirts. And we came out of the hills out of Van Cortlandt Park, and we had 5 runners in probably the top 7. And nobody knew where we were from. And you heard the buzz in the people standing along the road on the bank, you know, where are those guys from in yellow? Where are those guys from in yellow? Where are those guys from in yellow? And then, you know, Paul Bowman got to him that day because it was hot. But, you know, what those guys did, when you think of running 6K or 10K on Saturday and coming back with 1 day's rest and running 5 miles and winning that race, was kind of an unbelievable feat. And I don't know if that had something to do with it, because it just showed them, you know, there were things down in the tank that they didn't even know they had. And I still think that was part of why they ended up winning the national championship, of doing those 2 things.
So when you were at Lowell and the race finished, what was your gut? Where did you think you finished?
I knew we finished, you know, probably in the top 3. But it wasn't until, you know, until somebody saw the scoreboard and saw that we won, that it all erupted. And
so they were posting teams from low to high.
Yeah.
And I think the consensus was that the team was going to finish in the top 3. Mm-hmm. And they posted 3rd place, and it wasn't Millersville. So obviously the whole team was waiting to see what posted 2nd, and I believe it was Edinburgh.
Right, Edinburgh.
So in Edinburgh, were you watching that? Do you remember seeing that when Edinburgh's name went up and it wasn't Millersville?
You know, I don't remember that. I really don't remember that. I just remember Donnie Williams screaming and hollering that we won. You know, that's how I guess I found out about it.
What was that feeling like?
There is no feeling like it, you know. There's just no feeling like that. To know that your team just won a national championship.
And Dr. Caputo was president at that point.
Yes.
Because there's a now famous picture of him and you and Jeff Bradley
right.
at that football game, I believe, where he was.
We were presenting the plaque.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I do remember one thing. We drove to Lowell for the regional meet, and then came back to New York and stayed in New York, and then ran the IC4A meet. But we did fly to Boston for the national championship. I do remember one thing. I do remember when we got together before the meet, you know, right before the meet, and I tried to lighten them up, and I told them, I said, you know, look, I want you guys to run to get into the top 3, because I want to get on that airplane carrying the big trophy, you know, because the stewardesses would look at it that time. And so they did it. They delivered. And we were going to stay in Lowell that night, and the kids said, can we go to Boston? So we canceled our reservations in Lowell and got found a place, and in Boston, right near where the Boston Marathon, Copley Square, in that area. We stayed in a hotel right there. I know when we got there, we went to go into the parking garage. We couldn't get in with the parking garage with the van. We had to let all the air out of the tires to get the van in, to get it underneath. So, yeah. I remember the day, and of course, you know, they wanted to go out, and I went. After a while, my adrenaline was gone then. I said, I'm going back. Just behave yourselves. Don't get yourself into trouble. You know. So Jeff was with him. Thank goodness Jeff was young, and he could handle that pressure.
So as great as 1981 was, 1980 was probably the opposite.
Yes.
So what happened that, I mean, just everything just kind of fell apart that year?
Well, you know, Greg came, he was one of those individuals, he could never run easy. He ran hard every time. And after a meet, he came back the next day, and they went to Mount Gretna, and they ran at Mount Gretna, and he came up with a stress fracture. And I think it was just that he pounded himself too much. And I think that one of the other things that with the championship team, Greg became a leader. You know, he now realized he was appointed a captain, and he also had now a responsibility of being the captain of the squad. And so I think he cut back a little of that, even though he still trains like that today, he cut back a little bit that year and didn't pound himself like he had pounded himself before. So I think that was part of it. You know, and the sad part was that very first year in 1980 was the first year of Division II. The first year that we went into Division II. They separated that. And the national meet was in Riverside, California. And they were taking the top 6 teams out of this region. Edinburgh and IUP were a step ahead. The next 5 teams, including us being the 5th team, the next 5 teams, I think, if I recall, was separated like about 10 points. Even with Greg Caller running on a stress fracture, and our team as it was, we still missed going to nationals by just a couple points.
Exactly, because for the record, your dual meet record in 80, 3-1, we finished 11th at the conference championship.
Yeah.
And 6th at regionals.
Yeah.
So.
Or we were 6th. No, were we 6th? Then they took 5 teams. They took one less team. They took one less team than what we were. So we were 6th. They took the top 5 teams.
Okay. I was going to say, I think it was just one place.
Okay.
It was missed by one place.
Yeah.
Wow. So when did you find out that you were named the Coach of the Year in 1981?
Well, that kind of is a thing that is given to the coach who wins the national championship, you know. So it was after that that the coaches, that's not an NCAA thing, that's a coaches association thing. Okay. The coaches association does that.
So backing up a few years, in 1979, our team won the conference championship in cross country. How special was that to do that on your home course?
Well, anytime you win a national championship, but it's always good to win it on your home course because, again, there were a lot of people here that day.
So if I remember correctly, Al Treffinger and Tim Groff tied for first. Yes. They held hands going across the finish line. Wasn't there at one point a controversy because I think there was a rule that quote, you're aiding each other, and that they were thinking of disqualifying both of them?
I don't know. I don't remember that.
I think there was, because that was kind of the rule, that you can't help somebody across the finish line. So holding hands, you're kind of aiding somebody. And I think there was a short period after they had won that they were going to disqualify both of them. I don't know if you were aware of that or not.
No, I did not know that. It's good I did know that. Yeah, it's good I did know that.
So from 1968 until your retirement in 1997, you were on the Department of Health and Physical Education faculty.
Yes.
So if you can explain what your role as an educator was.
Well, in those days, I mean, this is as Art had alluded to, we were hired as teacher coaches. I mean, we had a teaching responsibility, and we didn't get very much time off for coaching until the system became unionized, and then the state system and the union determined what was release time for how much release time you would get for coaching. So, you know, the whole time we basically taught, you know, in half a load semester. In the off season, you taught, I think probably cross country gave you like a quarter load reduction. Track might give you a half-time reduction. I don't know what it is today, Andy. Well, it's not even the same thing anymore because all the coaches are full-time. But that was all spelled out in the collective bargaining agreement.
So what changes did you experience in your tenure as a coach and an educator with students and administration?
Well, I think the big, you know, I never really saw very much difference in the students. I mean, I think the students that I was involved with over the almost 30 years of being here were still very good students. You know, when a kid comes to college, you're not babysitting them anymore, and it's a matter of if they come to class and do the work, they're going to pass. If they don't come to class and they don't pass, they're going to fail. I mean, it's that simple. It's on, the ball is in their court. So I never really saw the bad side of students. I thought our students were you know, really good students to deal with, at least the people that I dealt with. What I saw was money becoming more difficult as time went along because the state kept cutting back on their funding, their responsibility to the state system. When I came here in 1968, they provided about 65% of the monies, and the students provided 35% of the monies, and now it's like 30% that the state provides and 70% the students provide. And that became more difficult. You know, things are always hunky-dory when you don't have money problems. It's like it is in a household or whatever. And it was the same here. When we all pretty much got what we asked for, there was no interdepartmental fighting. The faculties got along. As money's starting to tighten up, you know, then one department would say, well, you know, why are they getting this amount of money? We're more important than they are, kind of thing. And that's the attitude that came across the campus. And it's probably worse today than it was then.
If winning the national championship was your most memorable moment as a coach, what was your most memorable moment as an educator?
Oh boy. Well, I think there are probably several things. I mean, I can pick individual things. When I talk to people, you know, afterwards, when you would run into students, I'm going to talk two specifically. I taught a girl to swim. I taught swimming a couple times in the summertime, and I had taught a girl to swim. She couldn't swim when she came to class. And she worked hard, really, really hard. And she finally swam, and that was in Brooks Hall. And she could swim a length of Brooks Hall pool. Short time after that, my wife and I were at Park City, and we were walking through Penny's, and ran into this girl and with her mother. And she's the one who stopped, and she introduced her mother to me and said, "This is the man that taught me to swim." And her mother said, and she was so thankful, she said, because I would never take the kids swimming because I was afraid to swim. So it's little things like that. I had a girl another time I ran into. We had gone out on a Saturday night for dinner, and we were coming out of a place. It was transitioning from dinner to, you know, nightclub type activities. and I ran into a girl who had taken my jogging class. And, you know, she commented the fact, you know, that as being part of that class, you know, that she's now doing something on a regular basis. So you found out how important it was. So those are the little kinds of things, and you get lots of those when you were teaching. You know, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I was able to develop the campus recreation program from a time when I took over that had 7 activities, 4 for men and 3 for women, and build it into a program that when I retired, when you figure all of the kinds of activities that go on, there were probably over 50 activities. This was the intramural. And then I developed it into a total campus recreation program because we also had weightlifting. We also had you know, open swimming pools, the open gyms, aerobic dance classes because that had started at that period of time. And so you know, I was, you know, pleased that the university just left me run with that. You know, I could have sat back. You know, I think my personality was I was never just happy doing something. I had to do something better, you know. And I you know, I was very happy that I was able to do that and that they let me run with it.
So speaking of that, you won Millersville University's first NCAA national championship. You were inducted into Millersville Athletic Hall of Fame. You were inducted into the Susquehanna Valley chapter of the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame. You've been immortalized at the university here with a bronze plaque that's at Thiemsdorfer Stadium. So obviously quite an impressive career. As you were progressing through your career, did you think that you were doing something special, or you were just... No. It was just my job. It was just my job. It was just something that I mean, when I came here, when we were hired as teacher coaches, you really didn't, the only 2 sports that you really had to win in was football and basketball. I could have been, that whole record could have been flipped, and I probably never would have gotten released from the track job. Yeah. That's just, you know, that was an internal drive that I had, and I was fortunate enough to have a good wife who let me do it. That helps.
Yes, it does.
I mean, you're away every weekend.
Yeah.
In track and cross country.
And then out at nights coming into the intramural program. Because I came in when there were like the championship games, and especially in the early years until I was able to develop a staff, and then I later on got grad assistants that I could let them do that. But I would come in every time there was the flag football championship or the basketball championships or softball championships. I would come in.
So do you miss it?
I missed the interaction with students. I didn't miss the job because I was able then to do things that I always wanted to do that I couldn't do. And I was always one who, when I got involved in something, I went into it wholeheartedly. When I got out of here, retired, you know, up until the time I retired, pretty much my time was somebody else's time. I mean, you know, with track meets, cross-country meets, you don't pick and choose them. They're there. You know, you've got to go. And if you want the better team, you have to do those things to make a better team. When I got into athletic administration, then you know, I had to be at the football games and basketball games and wrestling matches and things like that. When I retired, I said, no, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Cy, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. It's been very insightful, and I'm sure those who view our site will really appreciate everything you've shared with us today. Thanks for taking the time and putting the energy into doing it, and for all of your contributions.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.